My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm 68 years old, and my only son begged me to fly across the country for Christmas, only to leave me stranded at the airport so he could take a perfect family photo without me. That snapshot ended up costing him a $2 million inheritance. It's a long story, but I have a feeling some of you might understand. Before I get into it, I'd love to know where you're all listening from. Drop a comment with your city or country and what time it is there. It's comforting to know we're all connected, no matter the distance. The phone call came on a Tuesday, the first week of December, as a cold sleet ticked against my window pane. I recognized the ringtone I'd set for my son, Michael, a cheerful little jingle that suddenly felt like an alarm. He rarely called on Tuesdays. In the calculus of our long-distance relationship, Tuesdays were a void, a no-man's land of communication. His calls, when they came, were reliably on Sunday evenings, brief and dutiful. "Mom?" His voice was a thick, warm syrup, a tone he usually reserved when the credit card bill was high and his commission check was late. "How are you doing?" "I'm fine, Michael. Just watering the poinsettias," I said, my voice carefully neutral, as I tipped the small can over the festive red leaves. "Everything all right?" "Everything's great, just great," he said, the cheeriness a bit too loud in my quiet kitchen. "Listen, I was just talking to Jessica and the kids, and we were all saying one thing is going to be missing from Christmas this year." I waited, my hand frozen on the watering can. I knew this game. It was a slow, careful dance of expectations I had learned over decades. Don't offer anything. Don't rush to fill the silence. Let him ask. "You, Mom," he said, the manufactured emotion practically dripping through the phone. "We miss you. It's not the same without you here." A short, dry laugh almost escaped my lips. It hadn't been the same for 5 years, not since my husband Richard's funeral, when I'd stood by a cold grave and watched my son check his phone during the eulogy. For 5 Christmases, I had sat in this same quiet house in Connecticut, the silence amplified by the festive lights my neighbors strung up. I'd wait for the perfunctory 5-minute call on Christmas evening, usually when they were in the car driving between parties. I'd hear the kids yelling in the background and Jessica's strained voice telling them to say hi to Grandma. It was a box checked on their holiday to-do list, an obligation fulfilled. "That's very sweet of you to say, Michael," I said, "but it's a long flight to Denver and the tickets are so expensive this time of year." "Don't you worry about that," he said quickly. Too quickly. "We'll figure something out. The important thing is that you're here." Then he delivered the masterstroke, the perfectly targeted emotional missile. "Lily keeps asking about you. She made you a special ornament for the tree. She wants you to be the one to hang it up." That was the hook, the perfect bait. My granddaughter Lily was 10 years old and the light of my life, even from 1,700 miles away. The last time I'd seen her in person was 2 years ago, a brief, chaotic visit when Michael had promised they'd stay for a long weekend and then left after a single night because of a sudden, urgent work thing. I still remember Lily's small arms wrapped around my neck, her tearful whisper of, "Don't go yet, Grandma." The thought of her small hands crafting something just for me, of her face lighting up when she saw me, it chipped away at the wall of cynical realism I had so carefully built around my heart. "Did she?" I asked, my voice softer now, betraying me. "She did," he confirmed, sensing victory. "She talks about you all the time. Please, Mom, say you'll come." Against my better judgment, a fragile little flower of hope began to bloom in my chest. It was a stubborn, foolish thing, that hope. It had been trampled and withered so many times, yet it always seemed to find a way to push through the cracks. Maybe this year would be different. Maybe they really did miss me. Maybe the hole Richard left was finally big enough for them to notice I was still here. "All right, Michael," I said, the words tasting foreign. "I'll come." The next day, I went online. The cheapest round-trip ticket I could find was nearly $1,000, a staggering sum for a few days. It would take a significant bite out of the travel fund I'd been carefully building. Richard and I had always planned to see the national parks after he retired. After he passed, I kept saving, putting a little aside each month. The name on the account was Richard and Eleanor's Adventure, but in my heart, I had renamed it My Trip. It was the one selfish, hopeful thing I was doing just for me. I hesitated, the cursor hovering over the confirm purchase button. Then I pictured Lily's face, her imaginary handmade ornament. I closed my eyes and clicked the button. The money wasn't for a pointless flight. It was an investment in my family, an investment in one last chance. I spent the next 2 weeks in a flurry of happy activity I hadn't felt in years. I bought a new dress, a deep emerald green that brought out the silver in my hair. I spent hours at the mall picking out the perfect gifts, a high-tech drone for Oliver, who was 16 and too cool for everything, a beautiful leather-bound set of classics for Lily, who loved to read, a cashmere scarf for Jessica, and a ridiculously expensive bottle of whiskey for Michael. I called my best friend Margaret to tell her the news. She was silent for a long moment, a silence that spoke volumes. "Eleanor," she said finally, her voice laced with the loving skepticism only a friend of 40 years can earn. "Are you sure about this?" "I feel it's different this time, Marge," I insisted, wanting to believe it myself. He sounded so sincere, and Lily made me an ornament. "I remember when he sounded sincere about fixing your gutter last Thanksgiving," she said dryly. "Is it still leaking?" I didn't answer. She said, "I hope you're right, Elle. I really do. But let me ask you this. If he lets you down again, what's your line in the sand? What's your breaking point?" The question hung in the air between us, uncomfortable and necessary. "I don't know," I admitted. At the time, I didn't think I'd need to. The day of my flight, I was so excited my hands trembled as I locked the front door. I'd packed a small suitcase, but my heart was full of oversized luggage, years of unspoken hopes, a deep-seated need to feel wanted, and the naive belief that family in the end would always choose love. I had no idea that in just a few hours, all that baggage would be lost for good. Denver International Airport was a chaotic symphony of holiday cheer. Families in matching sweaters hugged under wreaths, carols played softly over the PA system, and the air buzzed with the energy of reunion. I stood near the baggage claim, my small suitcase at my feet, scanning the crowd for a familiar face, a smile of welcome.
Michael had been so specific. "We'll all come, Mom. A whole welcoming committee. The kids can't wait." The passengers from my flight, a full plane load from Hartford, began to spill into the terminal. I watched as they were swallowed up by loved ones. A young soldier was mobbed by his tearful parents. A college student was lifted into the air by her father. A little girl shrieked with delight as her grandparents scooped her up. I smiled, feeling a vicarious joy, anticipating my own moment. 15 minutes passed. The initial surge of people thinned. The passengers from my flight had all claimed their bags and disappeared into the arms of their families. The carousel ground to a halt with a mournful squeal. The area grew quiet, populated only by me and a few airport workers. I was alone. I pulled out my phone, my smile feeling stiff on my face. No missed calls, no texts. I sent a message, keeping my tone light and breezy. "Hi, son. I've landed and have my bag. I'm near Carousel 4. I added a snowman emoji. I waited. The digital clock on a nearby screen ticked over. 20 minutes. I paced a little, my new shoes pinching my feet. Maybe traffic was bad. It was the week of Christmas, after all. A perfectly reasonable explanation. At the 30-minute mark, the prickle of unease started in the pit of my stomach. This felt familiar. It was the same hollow feeling I'd get when I'd host a holiday dinner, and Michael and his family would show up 2 hours late, laughing about how they lost track of time. oblivious to the dried-out roast and my wilting enthusiasm. At 45 minutes, the unease had blossomed into a cold knot of dread. I called him. It rang and rang, each tone mocking the festive carols around me, then went to voicemail. "Hi, you've reached Michael. Leave a message." I hung up without saying anything. The words wouldn't come. I called Jessica. Same thing, a cheerful, professional greeting, then the beep. Just as I was about to give in to the rising tide of panic, my phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. My shoulders sagged with relief. "See, Eleanor, just a delay. You're overreacting." I opened the message, a thankful prayer on my lips. It was a single sentence with a smiley face emoji. "Oh, the weather is just beautiful here today." I stared at the screen, my blood turning to ice. It wasn't a reply. It wasn't an apology. It was a generic, thoughtless message that had clearly been sent before she even looked at my text. She hadn't seen I'd landed. She wasn't thinking about me at all. I was just a name on a contact list, a recipient of a blast message about the weather. My phone rang again, and my heart leaped with a desperate, foolish hope. But the name on the screen wasn't Michael or Jessica. It was my granddaughter, Emma. Emma was the daughter from Michael's first marriage, a brief, tumultuous affair that had ended in a bitter divorce and a messy custody battle. She was 24 now, a bright, kind young woman working as a graphic designer in Chicago. She was the one member of the family who called me regularly, just to check in, to share a funny story, to ask about my garden. "Grandma," she called with a warm hug through the phone, a welcome fire in the frozen landscape of my afternoon. "How are you? I was just thinking about you." I forced a lightness into my own voice, leaning against a pillar to hide the tremor in my hands. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm doing well. Just out doing a little last-minute Christmas shopping." The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. "Oh, fun. Are you at the mall? Did you get that new coat you were looking at?" "Something like that," I said vaguely. We talked for a few minutes about her job, a new project she was excited about, her rescue cat named Gus, who had a habit of stealing socks. Every word from her was genuine, every question thoughtful. The conversation was a lifeline, a stark, painful contrast to the echoing silence from the people I had crossed a country to see. "Well, I'll let you get back to your shopping, Grandma. I love you. Merry Christmas." "I love you too, sweet girl. Merry Christmas." After we hung up, the full weight of my situation crashed down on me. It had now been over an hour. They weren't stuck in traffic. They weren't running late. They had forgotten. Or a far worse thought began to creep in, a thought so cold and ugly I could barely let it form. They hadn't forgotten at all. I looked around at the bustling airport, a sea of happy faces. I had never felt so invisible, so utterly alone. But the hurt was quickly being replaced by something else, something cold and hard and clear. It was the feeling Margaret's question had foreshadowed. I was standing at a line in the sand. I wouldn't call them again. I wouldn't text again. I wouldn't beg for scraps of their attention. I was done waiting. I picked up my suitcase, my knuckles white, turned my back on the arrivals curb, and walked toward the taxi stand. I didn't know where I was going, but for the first time in a long time, I knew I was moving in the right direction, away from them. I decided, right then and there, that I needed to find out the truth. Not their version of the truth, full of flimsy excuses and hollow apologies. The real truth. And in today's world, the truth is almost always online. The taxi driver was a kind man, with a gentle face and a Santa hat perched on his head. He didn't ask too many questions when I got in. "Where to, ma'am?" I said, "A quiet coffee shop, please. Someplace with good Wi-Fi." He dropped me off at a cozy-looking place called The Daily Grind. It smelled of roasted coffee beans and cinnamon. I ordered a black coffee, found a small table in a secluded corner, and pulled out my tablet. My hands were perfectly steady now. The frantic hurt from the airport had subsided, replaced by a chilling sense of purpose. I felt like a detective at the beginning of a case, and the victim was my own hope. My first stop was social media. I'm not very active online, but I have an account to see pictures of the grandkids. I typed Jessica's name into the search bar. Her profile was a public-facing monument to suburban perfection. Smiling photos from family vacations to Disney World, posts about school bake sales where her cupcakes were always the most popular, and gushing tributes to her amazing husband on her anniversary. It was a life curated for an audience. I scrolled down her public feed, my heart thumping a slow, heavy rhythm. Nothing from today, just a post from yesterday about being so excited for the holiday festivities. It was all too perfect, too clean. If they had made an honest mistake, if they had genuinely gotten the dates mixed up, wouldn't there be a frantic post by now? A worried message? The silence was more damning than any accusation.
Then I remembered the family Google Photos account. I had set it up years ago, after Richard passed away, as a way for us to share pictures and feel connected across the miles. I still paid the monthly fee for the extra storage. It was my window into their lives. I navigated to the login page and typed in my email and the password we'd all agreed on. Family Vance 2018. Incorrect password. My breath caught. I tried again, slower this time, checking each character. FAMILYVANCE 2018. Incorrect password. They had changed it. They had locked me out of our shared family memories. A lump formed in my throat, thick and painful. It wasn't just about a password. They were systematically removing me, deleting me from the narrative of their lives. It was a quiet digital shunning, as effective as any slammed door. I was no longer part of the family Vance that the password represented. I sat there for a moment, the coffee growing cold at my elbow. I thought about giving up, about just booking the next flight home and trying to forget this whole humiliating experience. But then I thought of Margaret's voice, sharp and clear in my memory. "What's your line in the sand?" This was it. I wasn't going to retreat. A different memory surfaced, a conversation with Richard years ago when we were setting up our first joint email account. He was a creature of habit, my Richard, a man who found comfort in routine. "Let's just use one password for everything, Elle," he'd said with a wink. "Keeps it simple." And we had. It was a combination of his favorite car, a '67 Mustang, and the year we were married. On a wild, desperate hunch, I opened a new tab and went to the iCloud login page. I knew Jessica primarily used the iPad I'd bought for the family years ago, a gift for the kids. Maybe, just maybe, her personal account was still linked to that old device's memory, still accessible through a forgotten backdoor. I typed in her email address. For the password, I didn't type Family Vance 2018. I took a deep breath and typed in Richard's old password, the password he used for everything. The screen loaded, and then I was in. My heart hammered against my ribs. It felt like a profound violation, like I was peering through a window I had no right to be near. But I couldn't stop. I saw her synced photo library, a grid of neatly organized digital moments. I scrolled past mundane folders, receipts, recipes, school projects, my fingers feeling clumsy and foreign on the screen. And then I saw it, a folder automatically created by the system. Its title, a punch to the gut. Recent uploads. I clicked it. The first photo loaded and the air left my lungs in a single, silent gasp. It was the four of them, Michael, Jessica, Oliver, and Lily, posed in front of a magnificently decorated Christmas tree. They were all wearing matching red sweaters, the kind you buy as a set. Michael had his arm around Jessica, a broad salesman's smile on his face. Oliver was making a goofy face, trying to look cool and detached. And Lily was holding up a brightly colored, glitter-smeared ornament. It was a cheap plastic reindeer, the kind you come in a box of 12 from a craft store. It wasn't handmade. It wasn't special. It was a prop. I zoomed in on their faces. The smiles didn't reach their eyes. They were posing, performing,
And in a synced note file right next to the photos, I found the caption Jessica had clearly been drafting. Full house, full hearts. So happy to have everyone together for our perfect family Christmas. The timestamp on the photo was from 1 hour ago. While I was standing alone at the baggage carousel, feeling invisible and foolish, they were at home, in matching sweaters, smiling for the camera, creating their perfect family picture. A picture that deliberately and pointedly did not include me. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a mix-up. It was a choice, a premeditated act of exclusion. They hadn't forgotten me. They had erased me from the narrative of their lives. They wanted my money for the flight, my gifts under their tree, but they did not want me in their house, in their life, or in their picture. I closed the tablet. I didn't cry. The pain was too deep, too sharp for tears. It was a cold, clean break, like a bone snapping. In that moment, something inside me shifted forever. The hopeful mother that had boarded a plane in Connecticut was gone. In her place was a woman who finally, after 68 years, understood her own value. And she understood with devastating clarity that she had been investing her love in a bankrupt enterprise. It was time to foreclose. The waitress, Chloe, came over, her young face etched with concern. "More coffee, ma'am? Can I get you anything else?" she asked, her gaze lingering on my face. I must have looked a sight. I felt hollowed out, a ghost in an emerald green dress. "No, thank you, dear," I managed to say, my voice raspy. "Just the check, please." As she walked away, my phone, which I had forgotten about, buzzed on the table. It was Michael. Then it buzzed again. And again. A series of frantic texts tumbled onto the screen, a cascade of transparent lies. "Mom, where are you? I just saw your text. We were at Oliver's basketball game. It ran late. So sorry. Total mix-up with the schedule. Why isn't your phone on? Call me. We're worried sick." The lies were so blatant, so insulting to my intelligence. A basketball game? On Christmas Eve? The photo on Jessica's iCloud was time-stamped. They were at home, in matching sweaters, not in a gymnasium. Their worry wasn't for my well-being, it was the panic of a plan gone wrong, of their carefully constructed narrative being disrupted. I looked at the messages and I felt nothing. No anger, no desire to scream at him for his deceit. It was a strange, liberating emptiness. The part of me that craved his approval, that would have accepted any flimsy excuse just to keep the peace, had died in front of that tablet screen. I picked up the phone and held down the power button. The screen went black, and with it, I severed the final cord. Chloe returned with the check. As I fumbled in my purse for my wallet, my hand brushed against the crisp envelopes containing Christmas cards for the family, stuffed with generous checks. A tradition. Another piece of the life I was leaving behind. I pulled them out and with a steady hand tore each one in half, then in quarters, and dropped the pieces into the small trash receptacle under the table. I paid my bill, leaving Chloe a $20 tip on a $7 coffee. Then I stepped out into the cold Denver air and called my best friend. "Margaret," I said when she answered, her voice warm and familiar. "Eleanor, are you there? How is it? Did they meet you?" Her questions tumbled out, full of worried energy. "They didn't come, Marge," I said, my voice flat and devoid of emotion. There was a pause. I could hear her take a sharp breath. "Oh, Elle, that son of a... I'm so sorry." "Don't be," I said, and I was surprised by the strength in my own voice. "You were right, and I've reached my line in the sand. I finally know what I have to do."
I explained everything. The wait, the non-reply from Jessica, the iCloud photos, the pathetic lies. She listened without interruption, a furious, supportive silence on the other end of the line. "That woman is a snake," she finally hissed. "And Michael, he let her do it." "He's not a bystander, Marge. He's a co-conspirator," I said. The words tasted true. For years, I had made excuses for him, blaming his wife, his job, his stress. But the blame was his to share. I thought of a piece of advice my Richard used to give me, his voice gentle but firm. "Don't let people mistake your kindness for weakness, Elle." For years, I had let my son do just that.
So what's your plan? Margaret asked. Are you coming home? Not yet, I said, a new idea taking shape, clear and sharp as crystal. I'm staying in Denver tonight. I'm going to book myself a room at the Brown Palace. It was the most elegant, historic hotel in the city, a place Richard and I had always talked about staying but never did, always putting the money towards something more practical for the family. And tomorrow, I'm going to start making some changes. Good for you, she said, her voice fierce with pride. You burn it all down, Eleanor. You burn it all down and toast marshmallows on the flames. We hung up, and I felt a surge of energy. I wasn't a victim fleeing a disaster. I was a general planning a campaign. I booked the hotel room from my phone, then took a taxi there. The lobby was breathtaking, a 9-story atrium with tiers of cast-iron balconies, all decorated for Christmas with velvet ribbons and twinkling lights. It was beautiful, and for the first time that day, I wasn't alone. I was with myself. I checked in, went up to my luxurious room, and ordered room service for one. I had a wonderful dinner, a perfectly cooked steak, and a glass of expensive Cabernet. I was celebrating. I was mourning the death of a fantasy and celebrating the birth of my own freedom. The next morning, Christmas Day, I didn't go home. I took a walk through the quiet city streets, a light snow beginning to fall. I found a post office annex that was open for a few hours. I bought a beautiful card and sat on a park bench in the crisp winter air. I wrote a long letter to Emma, my other granddaughter, the one who had remembered me. I told her how much I loved her, how much she reminded me of her grandfather, and how proud he would have been of her. I told her I was setting up a new college fund for her to pursue her master's degree, something we had discussed once in passing. At the bottom, I slipped in the sizable check I had originally written for Oliver. I sealed the envelope and dropped it in the mailbox. It felt like a vote for the future, a vote for a different kind of family, one built not on obligation or convenience, but on genuine connection. My first act as a free woman was complete. The flight back to Connecticut the day after Christmas was different. I wasn't running away from a disaster. I was flying toward a new beginning. The moment I walked back into my own home, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. It felt like mine. The scent of pine from my small, undecorated tree filled the air, a scent I now associated with solitude, not sadness. I spent the rest of the day in my home office, the room Richard had so meticulously organized. It was time to organize my own life with the same precision. I turned my phone back on. It exploded with a backlog of 37 missed calls and over 50 texts from Michael and Jessica. I scrolled through them with a detached curiosity. Mom, this isn't funny. Where are you? We're worried sick. We called the airline. They said you were on the flight. Please just call us and let us know you're safe. We're sorry. Their feigned concern was nauseating. If they were so worried, they could have called the police. They didn't. They just called me because their real concern wasn't my safety, it was their control and the loss of it. I deleted the entire thread without reading every message. Then I got to work. Before calling my lawyer, I wanted to understand the full scope of the problem myself. I pulled out the old file cabinets where Richard and I kept our financial records. I found the old bank statements, the checkbook ledgers. For 2 hours, I sat on the floor, surrounded by paper, and I traced the flow of money. The evidence was damning. There was the $5,000 check I wrote to cover Michael's legal fees during his first divorce, when he'd painted himself as the victim. There was the wire transfer for his down payment. And then there were the smaller, more insidious payments, a steady bleed I hadn't even fully registered. Automatic monthly payments for their car insurance, checks for summer camp, transfers labeled help with property taxes. It was a pattern, a long-established history of dependency that I had mistaken for love. This wasn't just about a ruined Christmas. This was about a lifetime of being seen as a resource. With this grim knowledge solidifying my resolve, I made 2 calls. The first was to my financial advisor, a sharp woman named Diane who had been managing my portfolio for the last decade. "Diane, it's Eleanor Vance," I said.
Eleanor, happy holidays! How was your trip to Denver? Illuminating, I said wryly. Diane, I need a complete report of all financial support, direct and indirect, that I have provided to my son Michael's family over the past 5 years. Everything. Tuition payments, car insurance, down payment assistance, all of it. I have my own records here, but I want to see the official numbers from your end. There was a brief, professional pause. Of course, Eleanor. Is everything all right? Everything is finally becoming all right, I said. Please have that report ready for me tomorrow morning. I will be meeting with my lawyer, Robert Davies, and I want it with me. The second call was to Robert. He had been Richard's college roommate and my lawyer for over 30 years. He was more than a legal advisor. He was a friend who had seen me through the best and worst days of my life. Robert, it's Eleanor. Eleanor! I was just thinking about you. Did you have a good Christmas with the boy? He always called Michael the boy, a term of endearment that now sounded like an indictment. Robert, I need to see you tomorrow. Urgently, I said, my voice low and serious. I need to make some significant changes to everything. My will, my power of attorney, all of it. The friendly tone in his voice immediately shifted to one of professional gravity. I'll clear my schedule. 10 a.m.? Perfect, I said. That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I opened the large wooden chest at the foot of my bed where Richard had kept his most important papers. Inside was the thick folder containing our estate planning documents. I pulled out the current version of my will. It was simple. Upon my death, everything was to be split 50-50 between my 2 grandchildren, Oliver and Lily, held in trust until they turned 25. Michael was named as the executor and held my durable power of attorney, giving him complete control over my financials and health decisions if I became incapacitated. I read his name on that line. Michael Vance, my son, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter air. I had given him the keys to my entire life, entrusting him with my legacy and my well-being. I had given that power to a man who couldn't even be bothered to pick me up from the airport. A man who would lie to his own mother, using his daughter as a pawn. What would a man like that do with unchecked power over my estate? What would he do if I were frail, confused, unable to speak for myself? The possibilities were terrifying. He wasn't just a thoughtless son, he was a liability, a risk I was no longer willing to take. This wasn't just about the past, it was about protecting my future, whatever remained of it. That night, I slept more soundly than I had in years. I was no longer a supporting character in my son's life. I was the protagonist of my own. And the next chapter was going to be written entirely on my terms. Robert Davies's office was a comforting space, all dark wood, leather-bound books, and the faint, pleasant smell of old paper and lemon polish. He greeted me with a warm hug, but his eyes, sharp and intelligent, were serious. He knew this was not a social call. "All right, Eleanor," he said, closing the heavy oak door behind us. "Talk to me. What happened in Denver?" I told him everything. I didn't cry or raise my voice. I laid out the facts with the cool precision of a witness giving testimony. I started with Michael's manipulative phone call and the lie about the ornament. I described the long, lonely wait at the airport, the insulting text about the weather, and the warmth of Emma's coincidental call. I explained how I discovered the iCloud photos, detailing the matching sweaters and the store-bought reindeer. Finally, I told him about the barrage of fake excuses. When I finished, Robert leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. He looked not at me, but at the framed portrait of my late husband that sat on his credenza. Richard spoiled that boy. He loved him so much he couldn't see the weakness he was building into him. He saw a son. He didn't see the man that son was becoming. I'm sorry, Eleanor. I am so sorry that you're the one who has to deal with the fallout. I'm not dealing with it anymore, Robert.
I'm ending it." Just then, his assistant buzzed on the intercom. "Mr. Davies, the report you requested from Diane at Northwood Financial is here." Robert had it printed out. He slid the folder across the polished mahogany desk toward me. "Are you sure you want to see this? Your own research was probably thorough." "I am," I said. "I want to see the official tally." I opened it. It was 5 pages long, single-spaced. Line after line of payments. A relentless chronicle of my own foolish generosity. $40,000, down payment assistance for their house. $7,200 annually, car insurance for their 2 luxury SUVs. $15,000, a loan to start Michael's consulting business, never repaid. And the largest of all, Oliver's college fund. I had been paying the tuition for his private university directly, $65,000 per year. The grand total at the bottom of the last page made me physically sick. Over the 5 years since Richard's death, I had given them nearly $400,000. Not inherited money I didn't care about, but money Richard and I had worked our entire lives for. Our savings, our future. The future he never got to have, which I had been carelessly giving away. A wave of anger, hot and clean, washed over me, burning away the last vestiges of grief and replacing it with a diamond-hard resolve. It wasn't just about the emotional neglect. This was a financial hemorrhage. I had been funding a lifestyle of luxury for people who treated me like an inconvenience. "Okay," I said, my voice shaking slightly, not from sadness, but from rage. "Let's get to work." Robert, ever the professional, gently played devil's advocate, a necessary legal precaution. "Eleanor, this is a very big step. Are you certain you don't want to consider a more moderate approach? A revocable living trust with strict conditions. It would protect the inheritance for the grandkids from Michael's mismanagement without completely severing ties." His challenge was exactly what I needed. It forced me to articulate my newfound resolve, to state it for the record. "Robert, my son is a 45-year-old man with a master's degree and a healthy salary. His wife is a partner in her firm. They are not in need, they are in want. They want a lifestyle they haven't earned, and they've been using my love and my grief as their personal bank. A trust won't teach them a lesson, it will just give them a new set of rules to try and bend. The subsidies are over, all of them, starting today." I continued, my voice gaining strength with every word. "And the power of attorney, a man who would lie to his own mother about his daughter's Christmas ornament is not a man I trust to make decisions about my end-of-life care. I want him removed immediately. I want Margaret named as my primary agent and Emma as the secondary." Robert looked at me, a slow smile spreading across his face. It was a smile of deep respect. "I haven't seen this fire in you since you negotiated the sale of your first house, Eleanor. It's good to see it again." He turned to his computer. "All right then, let's burn it down." For the next hour, we drafted the new documents. The new will was simple and direct. My entire estate, including the house, investments, and personal effects, would go to one person, my granddaughter, Emma. I stipulated a small, separate trust for Oliver and Lily, enough to finish their undergraduate education if they chose to do so, but it would be managed by an independent trustee, not their parents. The rest, a sum that totaled over $2 million, was for Emma. It was a legacy of love, redirected to where it would be appreciated. We drafted the revocation of Michael's power of attorney and created a new one for Margaret. By the time I signed the last page, my signature firm and clear, the sun was high in the sky. I walked out of that office feeling lighter than I had in years. I was no longer a supporting character in my son's life. I was the protagonist of my own. And the next chapter was going to be written entirely on my terms. Robert Davis's office was a comforting space. All dark wood, leather-bound books, and the faint, pleasant smell of old paper and lemon polish. He greeted me with a warm hug, but his eyes, sharp and intelligent, were serious. He knew this was not a social call.
I took my time. I carefully snipped one last dead branch, stripped the thorns with my gloved hand, and placed it in the yard waste bin. I pulled off my gloves, knocked the dirt from my boots, and walked to the front door. I didn't open it right away. I watched her through the peephole. She was fidgeting with the handle of her expensive designer purse, her face a carefully constructed mask of practiced concern. This wasn't a social call. This was a mission. I finally opened the door. "Eleanor!" she exclaimed, her voice a pitch too high, too bright. She lunged forward for a hug, but I took a subtle step back, my hand on the doorknob, forcing her to turn it into an awkward pat on my arm. "Jessica," I said, my tone polite but cool as a winter morning. "This is a surprise." "Oh, I know, I should have called," she said, breezing past me into the foyer as if she owned the place. She glanced around, her eyes cataloging the furniture. "I was just in the neighborhood, and I was so worried. We were all beside ourselves when we couldn't reach you. Michael was about to call the police." I closed the door, the soft click echoing in the suddenly tense silence. Was he? That would have been interesting. What exactly would he have told them? That his mother, whom he'd left at the airport, wasn't answering his calls? She had the grace to flush slightly, but she recovered quickly. "I just came to clear up this whole horrible misunderstanding. It was all my fault, Eleanor, completely. I put the wrong arrival date in the family calendar. I feel just awful about it." She was a masterful liar. Her expression was filled with remorse, her hand fluttering to her chest in a gesture of contrition. The old me, the one that craved peace at any price, would have caved. The old me would have said, "Oh, these things happen," just to smooth things over and restore the fragile illusion of a happy family. The new me simply stood there, my arms crossed, waiting. "Well," she said, her smile faltering slightly at my unresponsiveness, "I'm just so glad you're safe. We were picturing all sorts of terrible things." She launched into a story about a happy memory, a trip to the beach years ago, a transparent attempt to soften me up. I let her talk, my silence a wall she couldn't seem to breach. Finally, her real reason for being here began to surface. "And what about Oliver's tuition?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet, cutting her off mid-sentence. The question caught her completely off guard. The color drained from her face. The mask was slipping. What about it?" "I received an email from the university," I said, walking past her into the living room and turning to face her, forcing her to follow me. "I assume you received a similar notification." Panic flickered in her eyes. "Yes, well, Michael's been so busy. A big promotion is in the works, you know how it is. The paperwork must have gotten lost in the shuffle. We just haven't gotten around to it." More lies. They tumbled from her lips so easily. "I see," I said. This was the moment. The climax I didn't anticipate. I thought the confrontation would be about feelings, about the hurt and betrayal. I was wrong. It was about something far more tangible. Jessica wasn't here to apologize. She was here because a bill was due. The email from the university wasn't a coincidence. It was the trigger. They had discovered the first consequence of my decision, and she was here to fix it. She was here to put the ATM back in working order. "Actually, Eleanor," she started, shifting gears from apology to desperation, her voice taking on a wheedling tone. "It's a bit embarrassing to ask, but with this new promotion, Michael's salary structure is changing, and our cash flow is a little tight this month. The final installment for Oliver's spring semester is due tomorrow at 5 p.m. We were wondering if you could just help us out. Co-sign a small loan, perhaps, just until Michael's bonus comes through." There it was, the real reason for her visit, wrapped in a flimsy excuse. It wasn't a misunderstanding to be cleared up. It was a financial crisis to be solved. And as always, I was the solution.
She stood there, smiling hopefully, her hand outstretched as if to seal a deal we had made 1,000 times before. She had no idea she was no longer negotiating with a loving mother. She was facing a creditor who had just called in a debt of respect that was 5 years overdue. The storm was no longer gathering. It had arrived. I looked at her outstretched hand, then met her hopeful, desperate gaze. I let the silence hang in the air, stretching it until it was taut and humming with tension. I saw the confidence in her eyes waver, replaced with a flicker of confusion, then fear. She was used to me being a soft place to land. Today, she was finding granite. I said, "No." The word was quiet, but it landed in the room with the force of a slammed door. Jessica blinked, a fake little laugh escaping her lips. "No? What do you mean, no? Eleanor, this is for Oliver. This is for your grandson's education. You always said you wanted to help with their college fund." I said I wanted to help, not that I wanted to be the sole benefactor of your son's very expensive private education while his parents live a life of luxury. I corrected her, my voice as calm and cold as a winter morning. My answer is no. I will not be co-signing a loan, and I will not be paying the tuition. Your jaw dropped. The mask of the charming, concerned daughter-in-law disintegrated, revealing the grasping, furious woman beneath. You can't be serious. After everything we've done for you, we invite you into our home? I let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated disbelief. Everything you've done for me. Jessica, let's not be ridiculous. Let's talk about what I have done for you. Would you like to start with the $40,000 down payment on this house you're so proud of? Or perhaps the insurance on that gas-guzzling SUV in my driveway? Or we could discuss the nearly $400,000 I have poured into your lives since my husband died, while you treated me like a chore. She recoiled as if I'd slapped her. That's not fair. You're our family. You're supposed to help family. Don't you dare use that word in my house, I said, my voice rising for the first time, sharp and dangerous. Family doesn't leave a 68-year-old woman stranded in an airport. Family doesn't lie about a handmade ornament from a child. And family certainly doesn't take a perfect family photo for social media while their mother is waiting for a phone call that will never come. Her face turned pale. How did you know about the photo? You should be more careful with your passwords, dear. Especially when you're using a device I paid for, on a Wi-Fi network I paid for, in a house I helped you buy. You seem to have forgotten who holds the deeds to your lifestyle, but I am remembering.
The full scope of the situation finally dawned on her. This wasn't an emotional outburst. This was a calculated demolition. Her panic turned to rage. "You're being cruel," she shrieked, her voice cracking. "This is about that stupid airport incident? You're going to ruin your grandson's future over a simple mistake?" "First," I said, holding up a finger, my voice dropping back to a lethal calm, "it was not a mistake. It was a choice. You chose to exclude me. Second, I am not ruining anyone's future. I'm simply refusing to continue funding a lifestyle you cannot afford. Oliver's future is your responsibility. His tuition is your bill to pay. From now on, all your bills are your own." Her phone began to buzz frantically in her purse. The screen lit up with Michael's name. "I think that's my son," I said. "He's probably wondering why the bank has suddenly frozen his assets." That was a lie. I hadn't done that. But the effect was magnificent. Jessica's eyes widened in sheer terror. "You wouldn't," she whispered. "I have already done more than you can possibly imagine," I said, walking to the front door and opening it, letting the cold January air rush in. "The conversation is over, Jessica. From this point forward, if you or Michael have anything to discuss regarding financial matters, you can direct your correspondence to my lawyer." I pulled a business card from the small dish on the entryway table. Robert's card, which I had placed there that morning in anticipation. I pressed it into her limp hand. His name is Robert Davies. He has all the relevant paperwork regarding my will, my power of attorney, and my new financial directives. She stared at the card as if it were a snake, then at me, her face a mask of hatred and disbelief. As she was walking out, she turned for one last pathetic shot. "You'll be sorry, Eleanor. You'll die alone." "No, Jessica," I said softly. "I'm just beginning to live. Now please, get off my property." She stormed to her car, slamming the door so hard the windows of my house rattled. I watched her speed down the driveway, her tires spitting gravel. I closed the front door, turned the deadbolt, and leaned against it, my heart pounding in my ears. My hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally hitting me. But it wasn't a feeling of triumph. It was a feeling of profound, earth-shattering peace. The storm had finally broken, and I was still standing. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. My phone, which I had put on silent, lit up with a relentless barrage of calls and text from Michael. Out of a morbid curiosity, I read a few. The arc of his messages was a perfect case study in narcissistic rage. First, confusion. "Mom, Jessica just called me. What is going on?" Then anger. "How could you do this to us? After everything?" Then pleading, "Please, Mom, just call me. We can fix this." And finally, threats. "You're being manipulated by someone. I'm still your power of attorney. I can have you declared incompetent." That last one made me smile. He didn't yet know that his power had been revoked. A week later, Margaret came over for tea, her eyes sparkling with news she was bursting to share. "Well, the gossip mill is churning," she announced, settling into her favorite armchair. "My cousin Carol, who is friends with Jessica's sister, got an earful over Bridge Club. Apparently, things are not so rosy in the Vance household." I poured her a cup of chamomile, a small smile playing on my lips. "Do tell." "They had to sell the new SUV, the black one. Jessica is beside herself. She called it her errand car. They've also withdrawn Oliver from Northwood University. He's enrolling in the local community college for the spring semester." A pang of sadness hit me, but it was for Oliver, not for his parents. He was a good kid, caught in the crossfire of their greed and arrogance. I made a mental note to have Robert reach out to him directly about the educational trust I'd set up for him. It was important that he knew the funds were there for him, independent of his parents. "And Michael?" I asked. "Carol says he had to take a second mortgage on the house. Apparently that big promotion he was always talking about never quite materialized. He's been using your money to cover the gaps in his salary for years, pretending to be a bigger success than he is." It all clicked into place. The constant need for loans, the dependency on my financial support. It wasn't just about funding a lifestyle. It was about hiding a failure. My son, the man who projected such an aura of success, was a fraud. And I had been his primary enabler, the silent partner in his deception. A few days after that, I got a call from a number I didn't know. It was Susan, Michael's cousin. "Eleanor, it's Susan. I heard there was some family trouble," she said, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "I just wanted to call and check on you." This was the woman I suspected had been feeding information to Jessica. This was a fishing expedition. "I am quite well, Susan. Thank you for asking," I said, my voice pleasant but firm. "Oh, good. It's just Jessica's telling everyone that you've cut the whole family off, that you're not well." "What Jessica chooses to tell people is her business," I interrupted politely. "My health, financial and otherwise, is excellent. It was lovely to hear from you, Susan, but I'm afraid I have to go. I have a pottery class to get to." I hung up before she could reply. I had just set and enforced a new boundary.
It felt wonderful. In February, I received a stiff, formal letter from a lawyer I didn't know, informing me that he was representing Michael and Jessica Vance. The letter was full of legal jargon, hinting at contesting my sudden and drastic changes to my estate plan, citing undue influence from outside parties, and my own emotional distress following my husband's death. It was a thinly veiled threat to drag me through a competency hearing. I simply scanned it and emailed it to Robert. His reply, which he copied me on, was a masterpiece of legal brevity. It stated that I was of sound mind and body, as confirmed by a recent physician's assessment he had advised me to get. It pointed out that I had a robust social life and was actively managing my own affairs. It concluded by stating that any further attempts to harass his client would be met with a restraining order. We never heard from their lawyer again. The final desperate gambit had failed. Life settled into a new rhythm, a peaceful rhythm. I started volunteering at the local library, helping adults learn to read. I took that pottery class, and my hands, which had once trembled with anxiety, now were steady as they shaped clay on a wheel. I booked the national parks trip Richard and I had always dreamed of, a 2-week tour through Utah and Arizona. I was going for both of us. I was no longer waiting for the phone to ring. I was no longer structuring my days around the possibility of a visit or a call. My life was my own, filled with my own interests, my own friends, my own joys. The hole that Michael's family had left wasn't a void. It was an open space, ready to be filled with something new, something better.
Spring arrived in Connecticut, blanketing the world in a riot of green and gold, and with it came Emma. She flew in from Chicago to spend her spring break with me, a trip we had planned during one of our now weekly phone calls. The moment I saw her at the airport arrivals gate, the same gate where I had stood alone just 4 months earlier, my heart swelled with a kind of love that was pure and uncomplicated. She ran to me, her arms wrapping around me in a fierce hug that smelled of coffee and youth. "Grandma," she said, her voice muffled in my shoulder, "I missed you so much." "I missed you too, sweetheart," I said, holding her tight. This was what a reunion was supposed to feel like. Real, warm, earned. Her presence filled my quiet house with life and laughter. We spent the week doing simple things that felt profoundly important. We baked my late husband's favorite oatmeal raisin cookies, filling the kitchen with the warm scent of cinnamon and memories. We worked in the garden together, her young, strong hands digging into the soil alongside mine as we planted peonies. We stayed up late, sitting on the porch under the stars, wrapped in old quilts, talking for hours. She told me about her dreams of opening her own design studio. The new college fund I'd started for her had given her the confidence to plan for a master's degree. "You have no idea what a gift that was, Grandma," she said, her eyes shining in the dim light. "It's not just the money. It's knowing you believe in me. It makes me feel like I can do anything." One afternoon, as we were looking through old photo albums, she paused on a picture of a much younger Michael, smiling and holding her as a toddler. He looked so happy, so full of promise. "I heard about what happened," she said quietly, not looking at me, her finger tracing his face in the photograph. "My mom told me. I'm so sorry, Grandma, for everything he did, for everything you went through." I reached over and placed my hand on hers. "That is not your apology to make, Emma. None of that has anything to do with you and me. You are not responsible for the choices your father makes." She finally looked up, her eyes filled with wisdom beyond her years. "I know. It's just, I don't understand how someone can have something so good, something like your love, and just throw it away. Treat it like it's worthless." I looked at her, my smart, kind, wonderful granddaughter, And the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place for me. I finally had the words for the profound lesson my painful journey had taught me. For a long time, honey, I thought family was an obligation, something we were born into and had to accept, no matter how much it hurt. I thought that unconditional love meant accepting unacceptable behavior. I thought it meant I had to keep giving pieces of myself away until there was nothing left. But I was wrong. I took a deep breath, the truth of it settling deep in my bones, as solid and real as the ground beneath my feet. Family isn't just about blood. It's a choice. It's about choosing to show up for each other, choosing to be kind, choosing to respect one another. It's the people who choose you and the people you choose back every single day. My love isn't unconditional. It is abundant and it is generous, but it has one condition. It must be respected. In that moment, sitting beside her, the ghosts of Christmas past finally faded away. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal, they were all just parts of the story that had brought me here, to this place of peace and clarity. My life isn't what I thought it would be. It's smaller in some ways, without the big family gatherings I once craved, but it's also infinitely larger. It's filled with genuine friendship, quiet purpose, and the unconditional love of a granddaughter who chose me, just as I have always chosen her. And that, I've learned, is the most valuable inheritance of all. Thank you for listening to my story. I have to ask, do you think boundaries are necessary even with the people you love the most? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.